The second chapter of the 6 chapters on your final is chapter 22 on game skills. So on the next slide, we'll discuss all the advantages of playing games. As you see and you experience yourself anytime you play games, you're teaching the skill of interpersonal skills, how to work with one another. You're also teaching them how to understand the rules and also the limitations within the game. They're also learning how to behave in a competitive manner and cooperate in the situations. There may be some large muscle groups that they're working on, developing large muscle skills within their body. They're also learning how to tag, run, dodge, start, and stop under control is a skill that the students need to learn. And then also, I find very important in games is learning how to apply strategy. So you're applying as opposed to just regurgitating how to play the game. They have to have some strategy involved with it. So it requires a higher level of thinking. On page 540, they talk about evaluating games. So there's some factors that you need to take in consideration on whether or not you're going to want your students to play some games. And they talk about these factors here. What physical skills are required? If your students can't do those skills, then you do not want to play that game. The number of participants, how large or small is your class? The complexity of the rules. If the students cannot comprehend the game, then they won't have fun, they won't be successful in playing the game. And then the fourth factor is the amount of strategy involved. Can those students do that higher level of thinking? So the children need to have requisite skills in order to play these games. If you notice in the second paragraph, they talk about they also learn how to cooperate with teammates and compete against the peers. So I want you to know, the greater the number of teammates and competitors, the more difficult the game becomes. So the more students you have in your class, the more difficult the game will be for the students. I also want you to know, moving from partners to a small group to a team game is the natural progression, and it's a definite formula for success. So with the little ones, we play individuals or partners games. Then we progress to a little small group. Then we progress to the whole class, or the class broken up into 2 teams. So that's the natural progression and a formula for success. I want you to know, many of these games are more effective when played in small groups because the players handle the objects more often and they get more chances to contribute. So I want you to know, the rules and strategies for a game increase its difficulties. So depending on the rules, depending on the strategies of the game, that's going to determine how difficult it is for the students to play it. So I want you to know, for developmental level 1, these children, grades K through 2, find it difficult and uninteresting to play a game that has many rules. If there's lots of rules, those students are not going to want to play it. I also want you to know, your elementary school children cannot concentrate on skill performance and strategy simultaneously. They cannot. They cannot focus on how to do a skill and the strategy involved to be successful at the same time. Elementary school children have a difficult time with this. So your complex games require team members to play specific roles. You might have a goalkeeper or online. That might not appeal to too many children. It just depends. Your lead-up games are developed expressly to limit the number of skills needed to participate successfully. And I very much like lead-up games in order to have the students be successful. So when you're creating or modifying games, they talk about some suggestions here to start the children thinking. For instance, if you want, you could change the distance to be run, shorter, longer, just depends on the game. You could change the means of locomotion. Instead of walking or jogging, it could be skipping, galloping. You could play the game with one or more partners. You could change the method of tagging. You could make the goals or the restricted areas larger or smaller. You could also vary the boundaries of the game by making them larger or smaller. So I want you to know that as some alternatives, like these 5 here that are listed. Vary the boundaries of the game by making them larger or smaller, depending on the number of players you have. You could also change the formation of play, like to play circle kickball. Instead of a circle, they could be in a square, they could be in a triangle. I also want you to know you could change the requirements necessary for scoring. So, they might have to throw the ball X amount of times or whatever it may be before they can shoot the ball in basketball or whatever. Just change the scoring requirements. Another one, you could increase the number of players or taggers or runners, or even increasing the amount of equipment. And the last one, I want you to know you could change the rules or the penalties of the game. And this is kind of talking about what I was saying earlier. You can set a maximum number of 3 dribbles or allow the players to hold the ball for no more than 3 seconds. So you're changing and modifying the games a little bit. Cooperation and competition on page 541. I've said since day one for PE, especially elementary PE, it's all about cooperation preceding competition. So I want you to know games require cooperation before competition can be an outgrowth of an activity. We want to focus on cooperation and not competition in elementary PE. So I want you to know the difference in the definitions that are provided there for you on page 541. Cooperation involves 2 or more children working together to achieve a common goal. Competition, characterized by opponents working against each other, as each person tries to reach a common goal or reward. So through these games, the players can develop a spirit of working together. They can achieve a balance between offense and defense. You can evaluate the game components continually and modify accordingly. You can rotate students regularly so they have a chance to play with different classmates. And you always want to include children or students with disabilities in your rotation patterns or your rotation plan. Safety should always be your primary consideration in PE all the time, and especially in game situations. So you want to teach them how to move in a controlled manner. You want to teach them how to stop play immediately when your signal is given. And if you have to do the basic rule of 3, then do so to teach them they need to stop immediately. Teaching games effectively, I want you to know or be familiar with all 7 of these. For instance, I want you to know you need to put students in the formation they are going to use before presenting a new game to a class. I've talked to you about this. I'm putting them in their formation, and then you give the explanation. Here's where they talk about it. Number 2, use a trial period where you're not going to score or have any type of scoring in the game, and then the students can learn the game first, and then you add the scoring component. Number 3, do not use games that isolate one child. I have told you all this, how if it's an elimination game, no, we have to modify it. Number 4, Develop a rotation plan to give all the students, all the children, equal time to play. You have to have some type of rotation plan. Number 5, give all the children an equal chance to participate in games that require taking turns. Number 6, plan before attempting to teach a new game. You always want to be concerned about safety, the boundaries, the equipment, the skills of the students. You need to plan, plan, plan. And number 7, I want you to know when playing low organized and sport lead-up games, avoid using the out-of-bounds rule. So what does that mean? Instead, let's just make a rule that whoever gets to the ball first gains possession. It speeds up the game. It gives them a strong incentive for quickly getting the ball back into play. If you have some goal lines or running to a line, you want to establish a safety zone. So instead of using the wall or a line near the wall as the goal, you might draw a safety line 10 feet from the wall so they can have a place to decelerate so they don't run into the wall. To continue with teaching games effectively, number 8, change the makeup of the teams often and play relatively short games so they won't get bored. Number 9, use some type of identification for each team. They call them pennies, where those little plastic things they put over their shoulders and it's in the front and back of them, or armbands or colored shoulder loops or team belts. I've done that to play softball. It's really for flag football, but you can still use it for a regular game of softball or volley. Well, you don't need it for volleyball, but softball or other games, soccer, even though it's not flag football. Number 10, use these games to teach social skills. Number 11, help students understand that learning to perform skills correctly is more important than winning the game. Good luck with that one, because most kids are very competitive and they're going to want to win. But it's all about doing the skills correctly. And then number 12, use the rule of 3, as I talked about earlier, as a way of simplifying rules. Holding the ball for 3 seconds, taking 3 steps, if you miss 3 catches, or so forth. So the rule of 3 to simplify your rules. So on page 542, they talk about the selection of games. And I want you to realize that the games that are used in this chapter require minimal skill and offer the activity for all children. But I want you to know you need to analyze the skills children must practice before playing. We talked about this already, so they're just repeating it here in the chapter. Also, the drills and skill practice become more meaningful when children know they will use the skill in the game situation they're about to play in a few minutes. So it helps them to realize, okay, I need to know how to do this so we can be successful playing the game. So in your lesson focus and guided practice, that's where you would do the drills and the skill practice, and then you would play the actual game in the game or activity part of your 30-minute lesson. The games are sorted by difficulty. So in developmental level 1, we do not require competency in sports skills. That's just basic locomotor skills, and they have the opportunities to practice and participate successfully. And you see a list or a table 22.1 on page 542 to 543 that lists all the games in alphabetical order, as well as the skills required to play these games. And then starting at the bottom of page 543, you have developmental level 2 games on through page 544. And then on page 545 to just on page 545, you have developmental level 3 games. So in developmental level 2 and 3, that's where we realize that it's requiring specialized sport skills, playing sports. Ball handling, movement skills are very important for success for these developmental levels 2 and 3. Sport lead-up games on page 546. Your games in development levels 2 and 3, I want you to know, are separated into two categories. You have sport lead-up games and you have low organization games. Sport lead-up games and low organization games. This chapter includes low organizational games only, but your sport lead-up games limit the number of skills required for them to be successful in participating in that game. Thus, it's helping those children experience success when they actually do get into the sport and actually play the sport. So you take minimal skills for that particular sport, and it's a sport lead-up game. For developmental level 1, on page 546, I want you to know games in developmental level 1 feature individual games, creative play, low organization type of games, not high organizational type of games. We talked about this a while ago. But in developmental level 1, low organizational games, very little rules and strategy in the game. No strategy, really, just very little rules. They're individual games, and they also involve creative play. They're very simple games. They're easy to teach. Very little or minimal skills required to do it. You have number concepts, symbol recognition. Remember some of those. Animal tag is an example of development level 1. Then we did aviator. What else? Cat and mice, changing sides, things of that nature. Hot potato. These are all developmental level 1 games. Mousetrap, roly-poly, scarecrow and the crows. Then you have all kind of tag games listed on page 559. Stoop tag, stork tag, turtle tag, nose and toe tag, back-to-back tag, locomotor tag, frozen tag, Tommy Tucker's Land. These are all examples of developmental level 1 games. On page 561, they talk about developmental level 2. So, compared with the games in developmental level 1, there's a distinct difference for developmental level 2. I want you to know chase and tag games that you're going to use for developmental level 2 are more complex, and they demand more maneuvering, more complex, and demand more maneuvering. These are great for introductory lead-up games. For the students, they talk about addition tag as a developmental level 2 game. What else? Or is there bounce ball, box ball? There's numerous games in here. Crows and cranes. That's a little bit more thought into that. Let's see, what else did we do? Are we on our outline? One Step is on page 569. What else do we have? So these are all developmental level 2 games. Whistle Mixers on page 572. Developmental level 2 games. For developmental level 3 games, I want you to know these are more complex and organized compared to the previous levels. I want you to know greater cooperation is needed in order to be enjoyable. And strategy for the first time is really important for successful play. They develop cognitive skills. They develop thinking skills on how to play these games. Barker's Hoopla is here in the book. Just trying to see which other ones might be on our outline. Let's see. Foursquare on page 581 is an example. So this is conclusion for chapter 22, game skills.